Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriya. Nashtaprayasha Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So before we start the class, today I have my batchmate from engineering college. Raghuram he has joined us in the class and hopefully he'll be joining us every day. He's in Hyderabad. So welcome to the class, Raghu.
Hare Krishna, Raghu Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So continuing with our discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, ninth chapter, ninth chapter, entitled The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev in the presence of Lord Shri Krishna. Text 43 onwards. Sutuvacha Krishna eva bhagavati manovag drishti vrittibhi atmani atmanam avesha so antashvasu paramat. Sud Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Super Soul, Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent and his breathing stopped. So just for Raghu's information, so we are discussing Srimad Bhagavatam and we are still at the first canto. There are 12 cantos and in ISKCON, Prabhupada translated as 18 volumes because some cantos were bigger. So it's a ninth chapter which describes the passing away of Bhishma Dev in the presence of Lord Shri Krishna. After the battle of Mahabharata was over, so everybody assembled at the place where Bhishma Dev was lying on the bed of arrows. And Bhishma Dev first gave instructions to Pandavas, especially Yudhishthira Maharaj. And then afterwards, he prayed to Lord Shri Krishna to be present before him when he is leaving the body. He glorified Krishna and glorified the devotees of Krishna. And now Suta Goswami, who is a speaker of Bhagavatam here, the conversation between Shukdev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj will come later on. And now Suta Goswami is speaking in Naimisharanya to all the sages, and he is saying, so thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Super Soul. So this merging is not what we call as moksha or nirvana. This merging is because he, like in the shloka it says, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. Means he completely took a samadhi in thinking about Krishna, talking about Krishna, looking at Krishna, and that's it, nothing else. And thus he became silent, and then he became silent, and his breathing stopped. The stage attained by Bhishma Dev while quitting his material body is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, because he merged his self into thinking of the Lord by engaging his mind in remembering the Lord's different activities, his speech in chanting the glories of the Lord, and his sight in seeing the Lord personally present before him. Thus, all his activities became concentrated upon the Lord without deviation. So that is the highest stage of perfection. And it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. The devotional service of the Lord consists of 9 principles of service activities, and they are hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, worshipping, praying, executing the orders, fraternizing, and fully surrendering. So in Sanskrit, the terms are Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanived. Any one of them or all of them are equally competent to award the desired result, but they require to be practiced persistently under the guidance of an expert devotee of the Lord. The first item, hearing, is the most important item of all, and therefore hearing of the Bhagavad Gita and later on Srimad Bhagavatam is essential for the serious candidate who wants to attain the stage of Bhishma Dev at the end. So hearing is the most important item. Unless until we hear it right, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, unless until we hear it right, we cannot see right, we cannot chant properly, we cannot remember properly. So hearing has to be proper. So, and that also we have to be careful of. Who are we hearing from? Reading is also part of hearing, reading. When we are reading scriptures, we have to make sure we read the proper commentaries, otherwise we can get confused. Prabhupada is writing, the unique situation at Bhishma Dev's time of death can be attained, even though Lord Krishna may not be personally present. His words of the Bhagavad Gita or those of Srimad Bhagavatam are identical with the Lord. They are sound incarnations of the Lord, and one can fully utilize them to be entitled to attain the stage of Sri Vishnudev, who was one of the 8 Vasus. Every man or animal must die at a certain stage of life, but one who dies like Vishnudev attains perfection, and one who dies forced by the laws of nature dies like an animal. The human form of life is especially meant for dying like Bhishmadev. So, but to leave the body like Bhishmadev did, one has to practice throughout his life. It's not like we don't do anything throughout our life and all of a sudden at the last moment we're going to remember like Bhishmadev did. No way, it's not going to happen. And that's why earlier days, people used to name their kids also after name of Krishna, so they can remember Krishna while talking about their kids. But that talk again has to be very favorably done, the name of Krishna also, and in the right mood. Then it is beneficial. Of course, any chanting of name of Krishna will be beneficial, but if it is done properly, it will be more beneficial. So that's why chanting has to be very, very proper, very serious, very sincere. Then it will have desired results, no doubt about it. So if the chanting is proper, we can hope to remember Krishna at the time of death. Text 44. Sampadyamanam agyaya bhishmam brahmani nishkale sarve bahuvuste tushnim vayansi dinatyaye. Knowing that Bhishmadev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of the day. So all there, means everybody was present. Narad Muni, Vyasadev, Vasishtha, and all the rishis that we studied before, including the Pandavas, they all became silent, understanding that Bhishmadev has gone to the spiritual world. To enter into or to become merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute means to enter the original home of the living being. Means in this case, because Bhishmadev was in the Vaikuntha mood of relationship with the Lord, in the mood of his servant, and in the secondary mode of being a chivalrous servant, so he went to the Vaikuntha planet of the Lord. The living beings, I'm just fast forwarding, the living beings are all components, parts and parcels of the absolute personality of God, and therefore they are eternally related with Him as the servitor and the served. The Lord is served by all His parts and parcels, as a complete machine is served by its parts and parcels. Any part of the machine removed from the whole is no longer important. Similarly, any part and parcel of the Absolute detached from the service of the Lord is useless. So we are part and parcel of Krishna. But if we are not engaged in His service, then there's hardly any use of us. Of course, Krishna is so merciful, so compassionate. He still wants us to come back, even though we don't want to go back, even though we We have every other excuse of not going back, but he still wants us to go back because he knows that's the only way we can be eternally and completely happy. The living beings who are in the material world are all disintegrated parts and parcels of the Supreme Whole, and they are no longer as important as the original parts and parcels. Therefore, there are, however, more integrated living beings who are eternally liberated. The material energy of the Lord, called Durga Shakti or the superintendent of the prison house, takes charge of the disintegrated parts and parcels, and thus they undergo a conditioned life under the laws of material nature. When the living being becomes conscious of this fact, he tries to go back to God. And thus the spiritual urge of the living being begins. So this is the stage where we are at. The spiritual urge has begun and we have started the process. The successful living beings who are eligible to enter into the realm of the Absolute are called the Jnanis, the Yogis, and the Bhaktas. The Jnanis and Yogis enter into the impersonal rays of the Supreme, but the Bhaktas enter into the spiritual planets known as the Vaikuntha's. In these spiritual planets, the Supreme Lord as Narayan predominates, and the healthy, unconditioned living beings live there by rendering loving service to the Lord in the capacity of servant, friend, parents, and fiancé. There, the unconditioned living being enjoy life in full freedom with the Lord, whereas the impersonalist Jnanis and Yogis enter into the impersonal glowing effulgence of the Vaikuntha planets. The Vaikuntha planets are all self-illuminating like the sun, and the rays of the Vaikuntha planets are called the Brahmajyoti. The Brahmajyoti is spread unlimitedly, and the material world is but a covered portion of an insignificant part of the same Brahmajyoti. And Prabhupada further writes, Bhishmadev, as a pure devotee of the Lord, entered the spiritual realm in one of the Vaikuntha planets, where the Lord in his eternal form of Parthasarthi predominates over the unconditioned living beings who are constantly engaged in the service of God. So there is a Parthasarthi Loka where Krishna is there as Parthasarthi, and Bhishmadev entered that planet because he had that eternal relationship with the Lord in that mood. Bhishmadev never forgot the Lord in his transcendental feature as the Parthasarthi, and the Lord was present personally before Bhishmadev while he was passing to the transcendental world. That is the highest perfection of life. So Krishna was personally present there when Bhishmadev left. So it is mentioned that at that time everybody became silent because they understood Bhishmadev had just gone back. Text 45. Tatra dundu bhayo nedu deva manavada vadita shasansu sadhu ragyam khatpetu pushpavrishtaya. Thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect. And from the sky fell showers of flowers. So from the sky means the demigods were showering flowers from the sky on this, because this great devotee had just left for Vaikuntha planet. Bhishmadev was respected both by the human beings and by the demigods. The human beings live on Earth and similar other planets, in the Bhur and Bhuvar group of planets. But the demigods live in the Swar, or the heavenly planets, and all of them knew Bhishmadev as a great warrior and devotee of the Lord. As a Mahajan or authority, he was on the level of Brahma, Narad, and Shiva, although he was a human being. So qualification on par with the great demigods is possible only on attainment of spiritual perfection. So amazing personality Bhishmadev is. So demigods were showering flowers when he left his body. Thus Bhishmadev was known all over the universe, and during his time, interplanetary travel was effected by finer methods than the futile endeavors of mechanical spacecraft. When the distant planets were informed of the passing away of Bhishmadev, all the inhabitants of the upper planets as well as of the earth dropped showers of flowers to show due respect to the departed great personality. This showering of flowers from heaven is a sign of recognition by great demigods, and it should never be compared to the decoration of a dead body. So here also many times people throw petals of flowers on a leader's dead body, or maybe a sports star or a movie star, but that's not the same as showering of flowers from heaven or by demigods. The body of Bhishandev lost its material effects due to being searched out through spiritual realization, and thus the body was spiritualized, as when iron becomes red hot when in contact with fire. The body of a fully self-realized soul is not, therefore, accepted as material. So Prabhupada is giving this example of iron rod. So when an iron rod is put in fire, so that part of iron rod which is in fire, it becomes red hot like fire. It looks like iron rod, but it acts like fire. So similarly, when this material body that we have, when we engage it in the devotional service or the spiritual fire, then this body also becomes spiritualized. Although it looks like material body, but it is spiritualized. So that's why Prabhupada is writing later on. Special ceremonies are observed for such spiritual bodies. The respect and recognition of Bhishandev are never to be imitated by artificial means, as it has become a fashion to observe the so-called Jayanti ceremony for any and every common man. Jayanti, according to Shastra, such a Jayanti ceremony for an ordinary man, however exalted he may be materially, is an offense to the Lord, because Jayanti is reserved for the day when the Lord appears on the earth, or the Lord's pure devotee, they leave the body. So that is the day for Jayanti, means they live forever. Jayanti means Jay, it goes with Jay. And because they have spiritual body, that's why they live forever. But nowadays, Jayanti is used loosely for anybody or everybody, for all the leaders who use Jayanti word. So Prabhupada is saying it's not right. So this is one of the reasons. Like when a guru leaves the body, because if he is proper guru and is properly spiritually elevated, so his body is not burnt, it's not cremated. They bury the body, they make a samadhi out of it. And they say the body is lowered in the ground and a samadhi is made. So he's in samadhi. He's in samadhi. Samadhi means he is constantly remembering of the Lord in that position. So they lower the body in that pit and they make it samadhi. So there is a difference between, because our bodies get cremated because the soul is still attached to the material body and we have to finish off that attachment. But in the case of spiritually advanced, realized persons, they are not attached to the body, and moreover, their body is already completely spiritual. So they make a samadhi for them. It is different from Christian or Islamic tradition, where they do bury the body, but it's not called samadhi. They have a different reason, they have a different tradition, but it's not called samadhi. But for spiritually enlightened souls, we do the samadhi ceremony. Text 46. Tasya nirharanadini samparetasya bhargava yudhishthirakaretva muhurtam dukhito abhavat. O descendant of Bhrigu, Shaunak, after performing funeral rites for the dead body of Bhishandev, Maharaj Yudhishthira was momentarily overtaken with grief. So but here in the case of Bhishandev, they did the funeral rituals. They didn't do samadhi for him, although he was completely spiritual. Because of different reasons, they do that. Bhishandev was not only a great family head of Maharaj Yudhishthira, but he was a great philosopher and friend to him, his brothers and his mother. So Yudhishthira Maharaj was thinking of all those incidents when Bhishma had guided them, protected them, and taken care of them. So later, I'm not going to read the whole purport. Prabhupada has written wonderful purport. And Bhishma Dev, look at Bhishma, he was simply waiting for the opportune moment because he was sure and certain that the sons of Pandu would come out victorious in the battlefield of Kurukshetra, as his lordship Shri Krishna was their protector. As a devotee of the Lord, he knew that the Lord's devotee cannot be vanquished at any time. Maharaj Yudhishthira was quite aware of all these good wishes of Bhishma Dev, and therefore he must have been feeling the great separation. He was sorry for the separation of a great soul and not for the material body which Bhishma Dev relinquished. The funeral ceremony was a necessary duty, although Bhishma Dev was a liberated soul. Since Bhishma Dev was without issue, the eldest grandson, namely Maharaj Yudhishthira, was the rightful person to perform this ceremony. It was a great boon to Bhishma Dev that an equally great son of the family undertook the last rites of a great man. So again, Bhishma Dev was very fortunate to have Yudhishthira Maharaj perform the last rites. So Bhishma Dev, as we know now, he left his body when the sun enters the northern hemisphere. So it was actually the day of Makar Sankranti when Bhishma Dev left his body. Text 47. Tushtubur munyo Krishna, Krishnam tadguyanagi, tataste Krishna hridaya, swashman prayayu punah. All the great sages then glorified Lord Shri Krishna, who was present there, by confidential Vedic hymns. Then all of them returned to their respective hermitages, bearing always Lord Krishna within their hearts. So this is, all the sages who had come from all over the universe. So then they praised Lord Shri Krishna and then they returned to their hermitages because they had to carry on with their duties. All the sages headed by Vyasadeva were devotees of the Lord and therefore they chanted the Vedic hymns after the funeral ceremony just to please the Lord who was present there personally. So all the Vedas, Upanishads, Vedanta, etc. are seeking Him only, and all hymns are for glorifying Him only. The sages therefore performed the exact act suitable for the purpose, and they happily departed for their respective hermitages. Tato Yudhishthiro gatva saha Krishno gajavyam pitram santvayamasa gandharim cha patapasvinim. Thereafter, Maharaj Yudhishthira at once went to his capital, Hastinapur, accompanied by Lord Shri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt, Gandhari, who was an ascetic. So Dhritarashtra and Gandhari were living in Hastinapur, in the palace of Maharaj Yudhishthira. And they didn't come when Bhishma was leaving the body, but when Yudhishthira Maharaj went back, he consoled both of them. So last text for today's chapter. Pitra chanumato raja vasudevan modita chakara rajyam dharmena pitri patamaham vibhu. After this, the great religious Maharaj Yudhishthira executed the royal power in the kingdom, strictly according to the codes of royal principles approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Shri Krishna. And Prabhupada writes, Maharaj Yudhishthira was not a mere tax collector. He was always conscious of his duty as a king, which is no less than of a father or spiritual master. Because he had to see the welfare of the citizens from all angles of social, political, economic, and spiritual upliftment. So that is the duty of a king. He has to see social, political, economic, and spiritual upliftment of all the people, all the citizens of his kingdom. So Maharaj Yudhishthira followed these principles strictly. That is given in more details in the next chapter. Not only did he follow the principles, but he also got approval from his old uncle, who was experienced in political affairs, and that was also confirmed by Lord Shri Krishna. And Prabhupada writes the last paragraph, Maharaj Yudhishthira is the ideal monarch, and monarchy under a trained king like Maharaj Yudhishthira is by far the most superior form of government. Superior to modern republics or governments of the people, by the people, for the people. The mass of people, especially in this age of Kali, are all born Shudras, basically low-born, ill-trained, unfortunate, and badly associated. They themselves do not know the highest perfectional aim of life. Therefore, the votes cast by them actually have no value, and persons elected by such irresponsible votes cannot be responsible representatives like Maharaj Yudhishthira. So Prabhupada was always for an ideal monarch like Maharaj Yudhishthira. He is the ideal person who can rule over the world, because he took care of everybody in terms of social, economic, the spiritual upliftment, everything. So that is ideal king. But these days, those kind of ideal kings are not available. So we have to go by this modern form of government, democratic government, which actually they don't do any good actually for the citizens in general. So anyway, whatever is bad bargain of life, we go along with it. And the best thing is taking the bad bargain, which still can make advancement spiritually and go back to God. Hare Krishna. So I'll stop here and ask anybody has any questions or comments. Raghu, any comments from you?
No, not really. It's a good learning.
Okay.
In fact, Bhishmacharya that what do you call waiting for Uttara and attain something very good.
Okay. Vinay Prabhu, please turn off your music.
No, I'm not running any music, Prabhuji.
So who was it? Harinath Prabhu?
So Prabhuji, Hare Krishna, one question.
Yes, sir.
So you are in US. When are you returning back?
I don't know yet.
Because I'm planning, like eagerly awaiting the way you all went to Gopi's marriage in Vrindavan, and there are other couple of trips you all have done. You, Radhaji Prabhu, Pramod Prabhuji, and all. So I'm eagerly awaiting the next time when we get a chance. We'll all be together and we'll go to some special place like this.
Sure. But even if I'm not there, Radha Prabhu, Pramod Mohanty Prabhu, they all are there. They make wonderful arrangements. So you can go with them.
Sure.
Vinay Prabhuji will have to go to US to bring Prabhuji back.
That'll be little expensive, isn't it?
It's a difficult task, Pramodji.
Chalo. So you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
We'll see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri
Hare
Ram.
Krishna Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Prabhuji.